Professor Craig Watkins, thank you very much for joining us for the IC² Institute Best Practices Video Library. We're really glad to have you on this call, but also just in general as a supporter, ally, and a researcher that works in the similar space that we do. So welcome. And can you please just begin with introducing yourself and some of the research that you do here at the University of Texas?
My background historically has been looking at what I describe as young people's sort of digital media and technology behaviors, and really looking at through the lens of equity, looking at how Black and Latino youth, for example, use technology and the ways in which they bring ingenuity and agency to their engagement with the sort of technological world that we see around us.
The larger research that you do, the larger body, which is very fascinating. I found going through your work, and especially some of the books that you have out, if you can, I don't want to label you the millennial whisperer or the virtual, the hooked up connected whisperer, but can you speak a little bit, since you've been researching this generation, the impact of their connectivity, and now in this new post-pandemic world, what role they are going to play in not just the workforce, but into the vibrancy and life of a community where they were previously fleeing from. We're trying very much to have them return.
Yeah, I think we've misunderstood millennials and Generation Z in many ways in their relationship to technology. I think we tend to point our fingers at them. We tend to make statements that suggest that their relationship with technology is mostly negative and undermines their health and well-being, undermines their relationships. And what I found, in fact, over the years is quite the reverse in terms of my research. And that is the degree to which they use social platforms, the degree to which they use technologies to cultivate connections, to cultivate ties. Quite frankly, right, to build their social capital, to build their human capital, and they leverage the technological capital accessible to them to do that. So this is obviously going to be, incredibly important moving forward as we begin to see the role that technology will continue to play in terms of the kind of world that's kind of come to fruition. Remote work, remote learning, and not necessarily as a substitute, right, for the in-person, because these sort of virtual relationships, and I think young people understand this, they're not a substitute, but rather a complement to those relationships. And I think it's something that we'll continue to see them innovate in terms of how they use these technologies to pursue their aspirations, and they understand the role that technology plays in terms of oftentimes lowering the barrier to entry, into whatever respective industry or sector that they're pursuing. It could be in the civic space, it could be in the design space, the art space, the media space, the education space. But they understand, I think, and have cultivated, right, a disposition and a set of practices and values that allow them to use these technologies in ways that enable them to do really what they need to be able to do in today's economy, and that is to create your own future, to create your own career pathway, and to be incredibly flexible in an economy that's unlike any economy that we've seen in any of our lifetimes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. I almost feel like you're a champion for this generation. We had a program called Home to Texas, Professor Watkins, that ran over the summer. And at the end, we held calls with the supervisors at the agencies that provided these internships to UT students who went back to their hometowns. And they were blown away because their stereotypes of this generation were broken, because these were dedicated, hardworking, ethical, disciplined, reliable, responsible. All of these words came out, and we sat there thinking, and it was a stereotype that was broken on both ends. So also the generation had certain stereotypes of the supervisor. Right. So it was a mutual discovery.
I would also add, right, that one of the stereotypes, right, has been that they're less social, less interested in being social, and over reliant on technology. And if and one of the things that we've seen over the course of this pandemic, and I've seen it in my research and I've written about it, but I think we're seeing sort of anecdotal evidence of their desire, right, to be with their friends, to be with their peers, to be social, to be together. And for many young people, right, in fact, the degree to which they have been primarily restricted to only interacting with each other virtually or online has led to feelings of isolation, loneliness, mental health issues. And so it just belies the stereotype, right, that they're antisocial, that they don't know how to behave in in-person situations. And it's something that I think is really striking.
It's a great point. This whole, I really like how you framed it. It's a compliment. It's not a substitute. It's a complement.
Right.
That's really become evident. But it's fabulous to get your insights because they're empirical. They're research based. These aren't your opinions, and they've been tested and observed. And so we really appreciate the summary. And I'm sure the generation appreciates your work on their behalf. But we hope we can share your findings with a variety of stakeholders, not just for co-working, which is an incredible piece of the economic development picture, but also just the whole future of work and this new generation and what a great asset that they can be, and how to look at them differently through your lens.
Yeah. And if I could add one other thing, right, something else that we learned that was a really consistent theme across the interviews that we conducted is the kind of education that takes place within the co-working spaces. So there's a lot of mentoring that happens in these spaces. There was, prior to the pandemic, a lot of programming, right, where you would bring in local entrepreneurs, or you would bring in local experts, maybe from a university or from a local industry, who would come in and share their knowledge and insight, and just sort of build this constant flow of knowledge acquisition and idea exchange. And so this is something that many of the co-working spaces that we met, they will continue to engage in those kinds of activities because they see them as crucial, that as being hubs for learning and sort of demonstrating, right, real life models and examples of how you pursue entrepreneurship and economic development. But they'll likely shift some of that for the time being, maybe into more of a virtual mode. But the idea, right, is that these spaces are critical because they become laboratories, right, for people to develop the knowledge and expertise that they need, the competence and sense of efficacy that they need to pursue their entrepreneurial aspirations.
That's a great summary of just everything and multi-layers that a co-working space can have within a community. Thank you very much, Dr. Watkins. We really appreciate your time.